Buying a new camera can feel overwhelming. There's a ton of new gear out there, and most of it isn't targeted at photojournalists. In this video, I'm not going to spoon feed you the latest camera brands and models, but I will help you identify what matters when buying a camera as a photojournalist. My name is Sean, and I've been a photojournalist for more than 25 years, freelancing for the last 10 with the New York Times, the Associated Press, Getty Images, and many others. In this video, first, I'll share my philosophy with smartphones and traditional cameras. Then we tackle used camera gear and what specs are important for photojournalism. We'll wrap things up with recommended lenses and a look into my camera bag. Traditional purpose-built cameras have physical buttons and dials and are designed to fit the human hand for quick access to these settings. Smartphones are communication devices that also can make great cameras. If you want to pursue the craft of documentary photography and photojournalism, traditional cameras will give you creative control. Photojournalists work in challenging conditions and typically put more wear and tear on their camera gear than other photographers. Our gear stops looking nice quick and depreciates fast. I recommend looking at used gear from the major brands like Nikon, Canon, and Sony, which offer reliable performance and support. Avoid buying used camera gear from photojournalists. We tend to beat stuff up. However, thousands of people buy new cameras every year and they sit on shelves unused in near mint condition. Eventually, a spouse will convince them to sell their toy, and that's where you swoop in. Skip the latest camera models. Let the doctors buy them first. Look at cameras that are 2 or 3 generations old. You'll get 90% of the camera at 60% of the cost. A few places that you can buy used camera gear with some quality control is KEH, B&H, Autorama, and of course, if you've got a local camera store in your city, this is a great place. Modern cameras have an unending list of specs, and there's lots of different types of photography that have different needs. Here are the specs that are important for photojournalism. A full-frame camera body is advantageous, but not necessary if you're just getting started. Photojournalists typically work with available light, and sometimes that's a street lamp in a small town. How well does a camera perform at ISO settings above 6400? If the camera doesn't perform well in low light situations, you might want to look at using a flash. Mirrorless cameras outperform DSLRs when it comes to frames per second. It's not even close. But you probably want something with at least 4 frames a second. And as you get with sports and breaking news, the capabilities of those mirrorless bodies at 10 and 20 frames a second really come into play. Autofocus is a hard metric to measure, but it's one of the most important specs for photojournalists. Most modern cameras have large enough sensors for great image quality for photojournalism, and megapixel counts are largely overrated, except in sports photography where that extra crop can help a lot. Lenses are more important purchases than camera bodies. My lenses typically last at least 5 camera upgrades. And they retain their value better. Expect to spend money on lenses, but fear not, they make better investments. Most kit lenses are bundled with entry-level cameras and are designed to keep costs low on entry-level packages. There are a few exceptions, but you should avoid kit lenses. There are 2 different types of lenses, primes and zooms. People often mistakenly confuse the term zoom and telephoto. Zooms can be wide, normal, and/or telephoto lenses. For example, one of the most standard zoom lenses goes from 24 to 70 millimeters. This means it goes from wide, normal, to telephoto. But a 50 millimeter prime lens is always at 50 millimeters. Without diving too deep, zoom lenses of equivalent specs and brands are more expensive and less sharp, but they're more versatile. I think using a prime lens teaches us more about photography than when we use zooms, and for a beginner, this makes primes a great route. Prime lenses streamline our decision-making process, and they force us to move and explore angles. And in the process, this habitualizes us to work a scene. It teaches us about focal lengths and how far away we need to stand to get the photos we want. Zoom lenses can often be used as a crutch. I used the Nikon DSLR system for more than 2 decades before switching over to Sony mirrorless. Modern DSLRs are great for still photography, but not as much for video. If you have any interest in pursuing video, stick to the mirrorless systems. Your preference between these two systems may also depend upon the physical size of your hand and your shooting style. For example, I'm 5'6" and about 140 pounds, and carrying around two DSLR camera bodies all day long can be pretty taxing. I've really come to like the smaller, quieter mirrorless systems. Before you buy a camera, get your hands on the models that you're interested in. Physically get your hands on them. Visit a retail store, and if you've got a local independent camera store, you'll find local photographers working here and a community. As a photojournalist for more than 25 years, what's in my bag? My kit is normally two Sony A9 II camera bodies with a 20mm f1.8, a 50mm f1.8, and a 70-200 f2.8. I also have a Sigma 24-70 f2.8, but that serves as a backup and a macro lens. Occasionally, I bring a Sony 35mm f2.8. I've always preferred shooting wide with primes over zooms because the primes are so much smaller. Look at the difference between a 35mm f2.8 and a 24-70 2.8. When I'm shooting wide, I like to get up close to people. And when you're shooting with a bulky lens like this, I feel less comfortable. And when I feel less comfortable, my photos suffer. When I work in the field, I normally carry two camera bodies using basic straps. I also use belt pouches that allow me to add equipment when needed without using a backpack. I photograph a lot of sports and a lot of presidential politics because I live in an early primary state. As a result, I've acquired a few bigger telephoto lenses like the Sony 2-600 and the 300 f2.8. The 2-600 is a variable aperture lens and really versatile for daytime sports, especially on big fields. The Sony 300 f2.8 isn't the most versatile lens I've ever owned, but it's the best performing lens I've ever owned. The only reason I own this lens is because I found it at a discounted price that I just couldn't pass up. But if you're just starting out, you don't need any of this expensive stuff. There's so many options out there that will give you a great opportunity to become an outstanding photojournalist. Obviously, there's a lot more to photojournalism than photography and gear. It's about curiosity, storytelling, ethical guardrails, and so much more. And you can learn about these things by checking out the playlist that I've linked in the description. And if you get through that and still want more, I offer personalized online coaching.